This is Sean. Welcome back to the American Soccer Coach. This video is going to be about the Chinese Super League, who have just imposed a rule that allows pretty much the maximum a player can now make, a foreign player in the Chinese Super League, is 2.6 million in a single season. And so, because of this rule, a lot of people are thinking, rightfully so, that many of the best players of the Chinese Super League are going to be leaving. So, I'm going to be talking about this in this video. So, the Chinese Super League has attracted many good players the last couple of years, and I would say the deciding factor of why that is happening is these clubs are offering they're paying huge transfer fees, and then they've been giving players crazy salaries to get them to play in China. So now what's going to happen is, because they can only make 2.6 million a year, I think a lot of these players are going to end up leaving. And the reason I think they're going to leave is a lot of these guys, the money that they are currently on, they're currently making like triple or quadruple the limit a player can make with the new rule. So, like, for example, why would a player like Oscar or Paulinho or Hulk, why would these players play in China on 3 times less money or 4 times less money? I highly doubt that they will. So current players that there's been talks about these players leaving are Oscar, formerly of Chelsea, Alex Teixeira, formerly a Liverpool target, Graziano Pella, Miranda, formerly of Atletico Madrid, Paulinho, Hulk, Anderson Talisca from Guangzhou. There are many, Yannick Carrasco. I mean, there's tons of players that are currently playing in China that you could tell are probably mainly there because of the money that they're making. So the rule doesn't go into effect right away. It's basically whenever the player's contract runs out. So if a player has 2 years left in his deal, he will make the money that he originally was planned on making, and then after that, they now have afterwards they have to be on the limit. So why do I think they're doing this? One, I think that it's easy for the big teams to spend more money to get the better foreign players, the better elite players, which obviously is a huge advantage, because if a club is willing to spend 40 million on a player and then another club can only spend 5 million, obviously the big teams are always going to have the money to pay the player, right? So I think that's one of the reasons, but I think that this will be good overall for the state of the game, just because I'm happy that these players got paid. It probably wasn't the best move for most of these players in terms of challenging themselves, because the Chinese league is very unique, because players like Oscar or Yannick Carrasco could probably play in the Champions League right now, like round of 16 Champions League players. They're good enough to do that, right? But many of the players that are actually from China that play in the league, um, at best, are like conference level quality, like fifth division of England. So to have a fifth division player, or to have like 6 or 7 fifth division players, and then have 3 or 4 really good players, it's this very unique blend where it's almost like usually it's like you have a couple really good players and a couple players that aren't as good, but there's a big gap between the really good players and the players that aren't as good in China. So it's very interesting. I think that overall it will be good, because it's very hard for clubs in Europe or South America to hold on to a player when a Chinese team is offering 2.5 or 3 times their transfer value. So obviously the clubs will let these players go, and a lot of the players are willing to go because, again, they're making 3 or 4 times as much money in China than they would in Italy or England or Brazil or wherever. Um, so I think it will be good. I think that the only detriment from this will be it will be very difficult for a Chinese team to win the Champions League in Asia. And the reason I say that is I think you can only have 4 players that are not from the country of the club play in the Champions League. So, for example, if you're a team from China, you could only have 4 teams that are not Chinese that play in that game. Or if you're a Japanese team, you could only have 4 non-Japanese players that play for that club in the Champions League. And I think that that's where China, or the teams in China, will struggle, because the players in China are not as good as the domestic players in South Korea, in Japan, in Saudi Arabia. So I think that with that, and also not being able to attract high level quality in terms of foreigners because it's much less money now, I think that it'll be difficult for Chinese teams to do well in the Champions League until the overall development of the Chinese player improves, the average Chinese player, which I think long term is actually good for China. But in terms of results going to the Champions League, it'll make it more difficult. And because of that, I think that you will see once this is imposed, I think you will continue to see a dominance of Korean teams, of Japanese teams, of teams from Saudi Arabia in the Champions League in Asia. So hopefully it'll be good. Like I said, though, to get some of these guys back on terms of their career, like Yannick Carrasco and Oscar, players that still have something to give in Europe. I'm still like, I'm not upset with them for leaving. I think that a lot of these players are doing what's best for their family. Um, if that means taking triple or quadruple the money to go to play in China, and I have a lot of respect for that. But I think it'll be interesting to see how they can adjust if they go back to Europe and if they can still play at a high level. Let me know what you guys think about the video. If you think it's a good idea that China is finally regulating how much money the clubs are spending, let me know in the video. Let me know in the comments. Sorry, and have a great day. Thanks.